for the expulsion of student A with suspension of the expulsion order and to allow the students to return to school with placement in alternative education programs.
I'll second.
Aye.
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 In regards to item about agreement regarding disciplinary timelines, I move to accept the agreement regarding disciplinary timelines for expulsion for student B.
I'll second.
Aye.
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 In regards to the same item, I move for the expulsion of student C.
I'll second.
Aye.
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 Okay, now in regards to readmitted expulsions, I move for the readmission after expulsion of student D.
I'll second. Aye.
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 Under same item, I move for the readmission after expulsion of student F. Oh, there's a second?
Aye. Need a second?
We need a
I'll second.
Aye.
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 Okay, and then in regards into personnel, in closed session, the board took action to approve the following staff recommendations effective July 1st, 2019. The following administrative staffing assignments is made. So we have our Executive Director of Human Resources, Maren Roca Hunt, has been assigned. So congratulations, Maren. And then for Assistant Principal of Napa High, Thomas K. Lewis. I don't know if Thomas is here. Okay, congratulations to Thomas.
His future principal's here, so congratulations, Miss Reddy.
Oh, there she is. There's Monica. Hi, Monica. And then Executive Director of Fiscal Services, Melissa Cook. And we know she's not here today.
She's no longer.
Thank you. And then Assistant Principal of Harvest Middle School, Rachel Galdames. And she's not here. All right. All right. Congratulations to all of those assignments. No other reportable items.
With that, we'll move to the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This meeting is recorded for live streaming and archiving on the district YouTube channel. Approval of the agenda. Before we approve the agenda, I would like to request that item, hang on here, 1.3.A, or I.3.A, be moved up to before I.1.A, right? Yes.
I'll move.
So it's been moved by Mr. Gracia, seconded by Ms. Jankowicz. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Approval of the minutes of May 9th, 2019. Yes. The agenda with the change. So approval of minutes for May 19th, 2019. May 9th, I'm sorry.
I move. I'll second.
Been moved by Ms. Water, seconded by Ms. Gonzalez Mares. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We can't approve it. We don't have, so we'll hold that off until the next meeting. Oh, yeah, because I abstain also. Recognition of visitors and employee organizations. Do we have anyone representing any of our organizations? No, not they. Of course, they're all on vacation. Good for them. Good for them. Public comment on non-agenda items. Members of the audience may address the board on any school-related matter that is not on the agenda. The board will take no action on any item raised during this section of the agenda inasmuch as board action is limited to posted agenda items. Speakers are requested to limit their comments to a maximum of 3 minutes. I have a number of comment cards, and I will call these in order that they were turned in to me. First one is Vanessa Struven. Huh? You're going to pass. Okay. Rod Stone, followed by Sabrina Wolfson.
Good evening, Superintendent Massetti, President Hurtado, and members of the board. My name is Rod Stone, and I've been a member of Napa, living and working here for the past 40 years. I come to you on a personal note in that my oldest grandchild is a student at Mount George Elementary. He just graduated from kindergarten, and he went into the first grade, and it was quite a day what Ms. Mitchell and the staff put together. We're hoping that his little brother will be able to attend Mount George in the 2021 school year, and that's why I'm here. I grew up in Solano County and went to public schools, and when I was attending public schools, California schools were the finest schools in the nation. And now, as a result of funding depletion that we've had, California schools are lacking. They're towards the end, and it's not a good thing. You know, when you look at the amount of money that's being spent on inmates per capita, we're spending $81,000 per inmate, and we're spending about $10,000 per child for the school districts. It just doesn't seem right. I'm aware that the majority of the funds have come from the state, and that they were so dependent on the state when my grandchild missed a day in school, he attended Saturday makeup so that the school could attend that and get that funding. Superintendent Musetti, I understand that you inherited a bad fiscal situation with the school district and not through any fault of your own. But closing schools should be done only as a last resort. And I'm sure that you're considering everything. But I just became aware of this, and I'm not aware of everything that has been done. The 4 small schools that you have earmarked as possible closures are some of the best schools in our district. I note that Mount George Elementary, in the old days when they rated schools, would, to my recollection, they would be rated 1 to 10. Mount George would always get a 9 or a 10. It was one of the best schools, 8, 9, or 10. And now, I don't know, they rate them as good, or I don't really know from the report card. Mount George is a treasure. The low enrollment in the kindergarten class I'm personally aware of, and that low enrollment was not a result of the demand for attendance at the school. It was a result of the district not accepting students until the very last minute when the parents had already made other arrangements. And it just seems to me to be a manipulation, and it doesn't seem right. the district needs to think outside the box in an effort to gain some of the reserves back. And I don't think we need to get the reserves back all at once. It can be done over a period of time. The state has over $25 billion in funding in surplus. In Proposition 30, the temporary tax that was enacted in 2012 for 2013 was specifically designed for education. Where's that money? Other areas are being creative. They have parcel taxes that are being proposed. Okay, and I'm just about ready to wrap up. I'm not going to be able to attend the June 20th meeting, so I wanted to let you know my thoughts. But I hope that the board can come up with a solution to this problem, and closing the school should be done only as a last resort. Thank you.
Following Ms. Woodson, Mr. Kevin Hinchman.
Good evening, Mr. President and members of the board. I'm Sabrina Wolfson, and I'm a Napa native and a Mount George parent. I'm here tonight to urge you to keep Mount George open and rethink your strategy for addressing the budget shortfall. My son just completed kindergarten at Mount George, and while Northwood is our home school, we sought out Mount George specifically because it's a small school. Research shows that small schools have higher student achievement, closer-knit communities, higher parent involvement, higher attendance, higher teacher satisfaction, and fewer behavioral problems. They also provide children higher self-esteem and a greater sense of belonging. These things are all true of Mount George and are among the many reasons why families drive across town so that their kids can attend Mount George. I understand that the district is in a financial crisis and that difficult decisions need to be made, but the financial data does not support the closure of Mount George. Mount George, excuse me, spends $6,000 in unrestricted funds per student, which is 5% below the district average of $6,300. This amount is less per student than at Pueblo Vista, Shear, West Park, Phillips, and Yountville. By contrast, Yountville spends $7,900 per student, which is 22% above the district average, and they only have 120 kids. Phillips spends $6,500 per student, which is 2.5% of the district average. Of these 5 schools, Shear, Phillips, and Pueblo Vista are much larger than Mount George, with 500, 435, and 363 students respectively. This data shows that there's no direct correlation between smaller schools and higher operating costs. Most importantly, Mount George has substantially higher student achievement than all 5 of these schools, with Shear, Phillips, and West Park as the lowest performing schools in the entire district, and Mount George among the highest performing. Why would the district shut one of its top performing schools when its operating costs per student are less than the operating cost of its worst performing schools? By closing Mount George, you will only exacerbate the budget problem. Parents like me will send their kids to private school, resulting in even lower district enrollment and less money to the district. It will also lower the district's overall performance rating, which is already dismal, and discourage families from moving to Napa. I urge the district to look beyond Mount George to solve the budget crisis. The data shows that it's not a drain on the district's budget and that it has one of the highest levels of student achievement. When making these tough decisions, the district cannot look solely at dollars, but must think about the best interest of our children. We owe our children the highest quality education, not the cheapest one. Mount George is an invaluable asset to our community and to our children. Please make the right decision and keep Mount George open. Thank you.
Superintendent Musetti and President Hurtado, members of the board. I'm not good at these things. We moved to Napa 2 years ago from Evanston, Illinois, and the district has been incredibly supportive of us finding a great school home for my soon-to-be 4th grader. And we're proud to say that we have sought out and we have enrolled her along with our now kindergartner into Mount George. I have little to add after the eloquence that we've already seen this evening. However, it's with a small amount of distress that we learned this week that there's a potential of the closure of this school that we're so excited, and our girls are so excited to visit. We have several trips planned to the playground in the next week to visit and get to know their new schools. So we hope that you consider not only the current very passionate attendees to this school, but also the future ones. And again, we believe that we have found our home with Mount George and with the community. Communities at schools are much similar to communities at churches. It's you can't incorporate one church into another. It's the place that has a lot of meaning as well, and the people who run that place and who work at that place, as well as the people that attend that place. Schools are potentially, likely, more important than that, and so we hope that you keep that in mind over the coming weeks and the coming year regarding keeping Mount George open. So hopefully we'll get back on track a little bit. So thank you for your time.
Natasha Edgerning Ward.
Good evening, Superintendent, President, Vice President, and members of the board. My name is Natasha Engring Ward, and I am a current Mount George parent with children in both 5th and 2nd grade. I am also a foreign language teacher at Justin Siena High School. I would like to speak out in support of Mount George in response to the announcement that some small schools may be closing in the 2020 school year. When we started to think about which school would be a good fit for our son back in 2008, our good friend and neighbour told us that Mount George and how wonderful it was. She said that this was the school we should be looking at and aiming for. Upon visiting the campus, we were deeply impressed by the school, its faculty and its philosophy. We knew that it was the place we wanted our son to be, and we felt that here he could have a real childhood and receive a global, well-balanced education. And being originally from the United Kingdom, that was really important to us. 2 years later, we moved from the west side of Napa so that we could be in Mount George's catchment area to ensure that we would get a place at the school. Both of my children have been very happy at Mount George. It has a wonderful community feel. Staff and teachers do their utmost for the children every day, often going above and beyond what is necessary. Because it is a small school, all of the faculty and staff personally know me and my family, which I believe is significant and important. My son will be moving on to middle school this coming year, but he is sad to leave behind his amazing teachers and friends that he has made during his time there. The IB program teaches students to be open-minded and collaborative, and because of this, he has friends across many different age groups. This is so important and only possible in a small school. During his 5th grade, my son worked on his exhibition project, which is part of the IB program. This involved him working with several others in a group over a period of weeks. He did in-depth research and had to make both written and verbal presentations to parents and students alike. These projects were outstanding. The depth of knowledge that these students had was incredible, and this project was only possible because of the IB curriculum that the students are being taught. I have recently been studying for a Master of Education degree in Innovative Learning at Torrey University, where it has been shown that more personalised learning together with the use of tech tools are paramount in our children's education today. The IB program actively encourages students to be risk takers and work independently and cooperatively. These are clearly traits of value 21st century learning skills which should be fostered and preserved. IB also includes exposure to a second language, and at Mount George, all students in all grade levels have the opportunity to learn Spanish. Learning a foreign language is a lifelong skill. It is essential for students to be able to communicate effectively with others from non-English speaking nations. Mount George is a real asset to Napa Valley School District, and I urge you to remove it from the list of possible schools to be closed. There are many families who actively seek to enroll their children at our school. We have high test scores, excellent teachers, and wonderful students. Our school is very highly rated in the district. If it closes, many parents will take their students out of the public school system and will enroll them in private schools, which would take even more money away from the school district. Mount George is a unique school which provides a quality education, and I believe that it should be treasured by the district. Thank you.
Kimberly Desaias.
Good evening, members of the school board and Dr. Massetti. My name is Kim DeCiaz, and I'm addressing you tonight in response to the announcement of the possible small school closure in Napa for 2020. Mount George is my home school, and I have 2 children there. Lily is 8 and will be in 3rd grade, and Jay is 6 and will be in 1st grade. I am not a Napa native. I moved to California 10 years ago, and I have lived in Napa for the last 7. I distinctly remember having to choose which elementary school to send my kids to. As a parent, one of the first things you do is look into the ratings of the local schools, and in Napa, they are not good. Mount George stood out as the 2nd best in the district in general rating and test scores. I strongly considered private school, which many parents in Napa do because of the low-performing public schools we have here. However, with the high ratings at Mount George, the International Baccalaureate program, and the small cohesive nature of the school, I decided to enroll my kids there. We have all been extremely happy. Mount George is a wonderful school. The kids know all the teachers, and all the teachers know the kids. The principal knows both my children well. My son cried this year because a 5th grader, who was one of his good friends, was leaving for middle school. These things happen in a small school. The children that attend this school are collaborative, open-minded, and principled, acting with honesty and integrity. The mission of the IB program there is to develop internationally minded people who, recognizing their common humanity and shared guardianship of the planet, help to create a better and more peaceful world. Internationally minded, common humanity, shared guardianship of the planet, peaceful world. These are the types of citizens that we should all be striving to create in our world, especially today. I urge you to not even consider Mount George as one of the possible school closures. With centralized open enrollment starting, we will want a school in our district that people actually want to enroll in. A wonderful community with high rating, high test scores, creating globally minded citizens. Both of our kindergarten classes are full for next year. We are known for having a waiting list almost every year. People really want to attend Mount George. Please don't take away one of the best schools that we have. I know that if Mount George closes, I'll be taking my kids out of the district and enrolling them in private school. And I've already talked to many parents at Mount George that will be doing the same. I fear more school closures and consolidations will go the way of Snow Elementary School, which currently has a rating of 1 out of 10. I, like all Napa parents, want a quality education for my children. Mount George provides that education. I hope that I have helped you to see that, and I know that others in the community will as well. I thank you for your time.
Marta Moretzi. I'm sorry about the pronunciation. If it, Morisky. Oh, it's a K. Okay, I took a shot.
Thank you. Good evening. Good evening, Dr. Massetti and the board. Thank you for having us here tonight to speak. First of all, I just want to say I'm very grateful for open enrollment here in the district. Because of that, I was able to open enroll my children at Mount George. My journey, our family's journey, my children's journey started 7 years ago. When I had the opportunity to tour the campuses and make a selection in the open enrollment to decide which school would be a good fit for our family, for our children. So when I got the call from a certain British woman one day, I felt like we had won the lottery. I thought, oh my gosh, it's like getting into the college of your choice. I was so excited when we got accepted into Mount George. I live in North Napa, and every day, multiple times a day, through endless volunteer hours, I drive 20 minutes each way to take my children to Mount George. The reason for us that we chose Mount George was because it is an international baccalaureate school. They've got their international baccalaureate program. They've got their core curriculum. So not only are they teaching the state standards of core curriculum, doing it very well, it boggles my mind most of the time, they are also combining their units of inquiry, at least 6 a year, at a minimum, plus teaching these kids the learner profile. They're weaving this in so beautifully, so lovingly, and so compassionately with the students, that I just feel that this is a very, there's something special, something very special here at Mount George. And I don't feel that we could get that at another school. I don't feel like that would be right for our family. So my son, he's 11, he just promoted from Mount George. My daughter, and she's 8 years old, she is actually going into 3rd grade there. She followed in his footsteps, big brother's footsteps, and is at Mount George. And I told them I was coming to this meeting tonight. We're very open and we talk about things. And, well, what's the meeting about? They say. I said, well, they're talking about potential school closures. There's, money. Sometimes there's money problems in the district, but, we've got to do what we can to help out. Well, my 8-year-old said, Mom, I want to give them all the money that I have in my bank account just to keep Mount George open. Thank you for hearing what we have to say.
Mallory Macedo?
Good evening, Superintendent, members of the board, President, Vice President. Thank you for taking a few minutes to listen to what I have to say. My son, Andrew, is going into 5th grade at Mount George. My son, Ryan, will be going into 1st grade at Mount George. And then I have a 2-year-old daughter, Audrey, who I will hope will attend Mount George one day. Education is a #1 priority for my family and I. I grew up in a household of educators and administrators. My mother is a principal for the last 22 years in Rescue Union School District up in Sacramento, and actively searching for a assistant superintendent role right now as we speak. So, anyway, and my grandparents were teachers and vice principals, and so I grew up in education. I personally work for McGraw-Hill Education on the higher education side, so it's crucial to me to have a good education for my kids. We moved to Napa in 2013. I looked around at schools. We bought our house based on El Centro Elementary at the time, having a good rating. Andrew went to El Centro Elementary and had a rough experience for his first year in kindergarten. We decided that he needed to be retained, and with the partnership of Marin Roca Hunt, thank you, by the way, we retained him with her recommendation to Mount George. And it has been nothing but positive experiences for him since. He is grown so much over the last 6 years to this confident, amazing child that is going into 5th grade. Everybody knows him by name. He's the one with the golden heart and a smile on his face and the glasses that are bright green, and he's at 4-H camp right now, his first sleepaway camp, and he got up yesterday, and I just heard this from a parent, in front of all these other kids for entertainment night and did a skit by himself in front of 85 other children and had them all chanting his name by the end of it, saying, Andrew, Andrew, and cheering him on. This is the community that we have at Mount George. It is not just a school. It is a home. It is a family. It is a piece of my heart. All of those teachers and the administrators and the support staff are family, and they know my children by name, and they know the rest of my family by name, and they see my 2-year-old toddler and they pick her up and they hug her on the blacktop. I want my 2-year-old to be able to have those teachers that already love her today. And so I urge you to please reconsider, keep putting Mount George on that small school closure list. We have amazing staff that works hard. We are one of the top rated schools with some of the highest test scores in NVUSD, and so I would like to continue at this institution with my kids. So thank you for your time.
Peter Bartlett.
Hello, I'm Peter Bartlett, President Hurtado. Dr. Massetti, thank you for the opportunity you've given all the Mount George families to speak tonight. I'm going to try to keep this brief, in part because I think the other people who've spoken before have said everything extremely well that I wanted to say. I would like to say one thing. I'm a finance professional. I deal with budgets and budget problem solving all the time, and I appreciate what a difficult challenge you have ahead of you with your budget problems. One of the things I always try to think about with budgets, and I hope you'll consider, is always trying to reallocate resources where they can do the most good, trying to optimize the use of our resources. And I'd like to suggest for consideration that closing a highly productive school in favor of other schools that are less productive may not be the highest use of our resources. Thank you.
Joshua Clark.
A bit taller, so. Good evening, Superintendent and the board. I'm going to go in a little bit of a different direction. My name is Joshua Clark. My two kids, Cy and Chase, go to Mount George. I actually work for Cisco, and I'm in the corporate learning environment. So, you know, Cisco was just rated the 6th best place to work in the United States. So I work for a very good firm, and I understand what our kids are going to be up against as they get older and go on to try to get jobs in the workplace. With things like artificial intelligence, automation, it's going to be really tough for them to get a high-paying job. So some of the key things that we teach and we look for are those unique skills that can't be automated, like creativity, collaboration, the type of things that Mount George teaches. So these are skill sets that are going to give them a leg up once they get into the real world. The other thing is, you know, when I look at the budget, I understand it's a difficult situation, but we live in Napa Valley where billions of dollars flow into where people come to visit. I think it's the 2nd most visited place behind Disneyland. And I'm wondering why we can't tap into that revenue stream, maybe a 1-cent occupancy tax, something that won't hit the locals, but will hit those people that come to our beloved place that we call home and use it as their playground. Why can't we take that money and actually not just, you know, stop schools from being closed, but actually improve them, improve the services that are available, expand the programs and after-school capabilities that are there, so our kids can actually be competitive in this super hyper competitive world. If we can't do any kind of local tax thing, then I would say the next thing we look at is look at low performing schools. We don't want to take our best schools and close them just because it's easy. We want to look at what are those schools that aren't performing well and close them. Again, I'm not for that. I'm for raising revenue and actually improving all schools in the valley. Now, if all of those things fail and we have to close Mount George, then you're going to be losing 2 people that would be contributing to your revenue stream because they would be going to private school. Thanks for your time tonight.
Vanessa, are you ready?
I'm not good at these things, but my name's Vanessa Struven, and my daughter, she goes to Alta Heights, and we actually, before me and my husband, we decided to have children, we actually moved to the Alta Heights district because we knew it was like a small school, a good community, and I just want to say that I hope that you don't close the school and the other parents, they address what I wanted to address today, but I'm involved. I'm on the site council. I'm on the FFC. We're really like involved with like the parents, the teachers, the staff, and I just want to be here to support Alta Heights. Thank you.
Charlie Jones.
Good evening, Dr. Massetti and school board members. I hadn't intended on saying anything tonight because I wasn't aware that we were in a budget situation as bad as it is now. However, as much as it pains me, I'd like to throw in a solution of sorts. The Vintage High School farm exists as it is now. You wouldn't have to build a new farm right away or down the road even. And you could save a lot of money and not close some of these other schools if you did that. Thank you.
Thank you all. Just one comment, and we'll move on with the agenda since we have quite an extensive agenda. The hardest thing for a board to do is to consider closing a school for any reason. And so please don't think that's the easy solution for us, because it's probably the hardest thing a school board does. We have close to 18,000 students that we are responsible for, and we treasure every single one of those students. It hurts me when parents talk about dismal education being offered anywhere in the district, because I have visited every single school in this district. I have talked to teachers at every school, and every single one of them is as dedicated to their students as Mount George or any small school teacher is dedicated to theirs. So please don't think for a moment that this is easy for any of us, or that we're not looking under every rock, looking around every corner, looking through every book for some money that somebody might have stashed in the library. So this is going to be a very closely considered decision. We welcome your input. We invite you. I think we have several meetings, but please, this is the kind of input we need. But remember, we cherish every one of our close to 18,000 students. And I do thank you for being here. I know how difficult this is for you. I've been through school closure one other time with the board, and believe me, it was difficult. So thank you again. We'll consider this decision very closely.
President Hurtado, I'd just like to add, I want to thank families for attending tonight. Just a reminder that we do have our meeting on Monday night where we'll address the issue in depth and provide information, and that'll be a first initial meeting. And like President Hurtado said, me and my staff will be making it out in the fall to update school communities. Our goal through all of this is to maintain very proactive, ongoing communication. And so you have our commitment around that as we face this potential challenge. So thank you.
The meeting is at 6 p.m. Monday?
6 p.m. I think someone said Monday the 20th, but it's Monday the June 17th here in this boardroom.
Thank you. Oh. Item G, reports. Board of Education and student representatives.
Wait.
You're welcome.
We closed the school. It was 125 years old. Mr. Gracia.
Yes. So it's been a busy couple weeks. On the 22nd of May, I went to the Mount George Open House, learned all about fourth grade projects and some of the units that they studied this year. On the 29th, I had a productive meeting with the mayor and vice mayor of Yountville. I attended the Central Kitchen Open House, was impressed by the facility and the increased capabilities that this facility gives us to produce high quality food in their district. Attended the various graduation ceremonies for many of the high schools and shook many hands. And that's the extent of my report.
I too attended 6 of the 7 graduations and 1 8th grade promotion. These ceremonies remind me how great our kids are, and it's important to remind ourselves regularly of this, given that we also see the kids who make poor decisions, some of which were covered in the clerk's report earlier today. And I too attended the Central Kitchen grand opening. It occurred to me to use board member comments at the end, but given the length of the agenda, I'll take advantage of a fading memory around 10 tonight and raise the question. Last week, CSBA came out with an air quality guidance tool for districts. And it's really to ask staff who would end up having to think about it and operationalize it, whether they've seen it, what our plans are now that we have clearly entered fire season, and whether we want, to what degree we want to entangle ourselves with the other 4 districts in the county office, but about the time you open the schools again in August, we should be really well into fire season. So I'm just placing it on the radar. I'm hoping you've already got lots and lots of answers, but it'll be upon us sooner as opposed to later.
I too went to the kitchen opening. I mean, that is just with feeding the 18,000 kids approximately. The facility is just has this very complex looking, enough room for forklifts to move in and out, automation. So it's very exciting to see that a current facility that we had got updated and then updated in the most, I think, useful way of our funds. And that at the end of the day, it's going to help provide healthier food for our kids and the community, since it's such a great food program. I too attended 6 out of the 7 graduations. I think that's been a tradition of ours as board members, as we're not required to go, but it's just one of those moments where you are faced with thousands of kids and families, and a joyous moment as you're seeing them finish a very important passage of their life, and just the number of schools. I mean, you're just reminded so much of the work that we have to do, and the responsibility and our role as we see our kids cross the stage, and how we have provided various ways for them to succeed, from our independent studies program, Valley Oak, our adult education, to our more traditional high schools. But the breadth of care and love that comes from the teachers, the staff, the administration, is felt in every single graduation. So I just want to congratulate the team and the staff that put together a very seamless, what seemed a very seamless graduation when you're handling thousands of people in a crowd. So lots of energy. Everyone was hydrated, so I'm glad to hear that no one fainted and passed out. But looking forward to next year. So just really great to be able to be in, and a privilege to be shaking those kids' hands as they move on.
I attended the City of Napa meeting with Trustee Water. She will report. I attended the meeting with the town of Yountville with David T. Grazia, the Central Kitchen Open House, and attended the graduation ceremonies of our distinguished class of 2019. It was an honor to attend the graduation ceremonies. It is a revered ritual in education, a rite of passage, an acknowledgement of what has been accomplished, and a celebration of what is to come. And we saw all of this in the words and the smiles of our graduates. An enormous thank you to all the faculty, administration, and staff that have supported their journey over the last 4 years. Well done to you all. And I will briefly update you on the meeting with the town of Yountville. We met with the mayor of Yountville, Mr. John Dunbar, Vice Mayor Carrie Dorman, Superintendent Dr. Massetti, Mr. Pearson, Board Member David Grazia, and myself. The purpose of this meeting and meetings going forward is to execute good practice of convening with our constituents, keeping communication channels open, and transparency in our exchange of information. We use this approach with the City of Napa and American Canyon as well. We discussed utilizing a comprehensive approach to addressing budgetary issues. Dialogue was had regarding 5 key bullet points: declining enrollment, pension costs, supplemental fund qualifications, small schools, and charter schools. We have an obligation to have robust programs and curriculum. These decisions have to be based on the best outcomes for all students within our financial parameters. Mr. Dunbar and Ms. Dorman articulated their support for the parents and community of Yountville and their commitment to understanding the considerations before us. We discussed the need for a long-term plan that is proactive, not reactive, and the importance of partnership with all of our constituents.
Okay, great. Well, I too went to the opening of the kitchen. I went to 5 of the high school graduations. I was unable to attend Vintage or American Canyon because of traffic, and Vintage because of my obligation with Master Gardeners, the cult of which I'm a member, and UC Master Gardeners. And I also went to the Silverado Middle School promotion, and that was wonderful, where I heard for the first time a valedictory address delivered in rap rhyme. It was lots of fun. Superintendent Massetti and I enjoyed ourselves. I also have been touring around sort of on a challenge from a citizen who's probably watching out in TV land tonight, to have a meal at, various schools. And I think I've hit about a dozen schools of late in a couple of weeks, and I already feel more slender and more fit. And full of energy, and I've added a couple of IQ points. So I think, no, seriously, I had some very good meals. So $4 lunch, folks. You can't beat that with a stick. And so that was a lot of fun. And I'd like to thank everybody who made the graduations go so well. It was fun, and as you know, I was a teacher in the district for actually really 18 years, and I'm seeing former students who are shepherding their younger siblings through graduation, and forcing me to take pictures with them that appear on social media, making me deeply regret not doing the makeup tutorials that everybody else has been doing. So yeah, it was really shocking. But I had a great time. And it's a wonderful end of the year. And I just love our students, all of them. And let's see, I also had and this is Robin, this lady, and Superintendent Massetti, and Mr. Mansway of Student Services, and one of the school resource officers, and Mike Pearson, and City Manager Potter. Am I leaving anyone out? And we attended a meeting where we, shared our woes. It was a positive, amicable meeting. The city is facing a few challenges. We certainly are too. We discussed the cost of water. For example, we used to get it for free, and now we're not. And so we're sorting things out, trying to, with our facilities, trying to come to an agreement about, appropriate usage fees. Let's see, we discussed planning and housing proposals in Napa. The city manager mentioned that inclusionary numbers are down. That's low-cost housing. We talked about developments on Central and Soskell, and then Napa Pipe, which was approved years ago, has not been constructed yet. Most people know of it as a site of a future Costco, perhaps. And Potter mentioned that the permits can be completed in a year, but then it takes another 2 years for construction to be complete. So all these projected houses take a long time to come on board, and then in some cases, people sit on their entitlements, for 10 years or more. We're going to be negotiating some issues with Parks and Recreation relative to maintenance, scheduling, and hang on. Our school resource officers cost a little over $300,000 a year. And we share the cost. We pay a little bit less than half. The school district pays a little less than half. And another school resource officer would cost $100,000, and River School had the use of one for a while. And he did say something interesting, and I wish some of the visitors tonight had hung around and listened to this, because he said that the transient occupancy tax in the city of Napa is down a bit. It's down from what they thought, what they had projected. And there could be a variety of reasons for it, but certainly Airbnb, illegal Airbnbs have cut into it, and they're having to go to the expense of hiring another person to go down and chase these down and chase the taxes down. And it might be people whose children go to our schools might not be aware of this, but we don't get anything from the transient occupancy tax. When you pick up the newspaper and read about the millions of dollars that are flowing into the county, we see very little. We see nothing, actually. We get none of it. So that's my report. Would you like to add anything?
No, well done.
Okay, thank you.
If I may, it's good to be back, and I was glad that the board did so well in my absence. I almost feel bad that they did so well when I'm in my absence, but thank you very much. As you know, I was out of the country for a little while. One of the most interesting things that I experienced while I was out of the country in Rome was during, and this is Pride Month, that the hotel we were staying in was hosting the third, it wasn't annual, but the third European conference on transgender and I can't remember the whole title. I was going to bring the book, Summit. And, I was so excited. I knocked over a few signs getting to the registration table because all I wanted was a brochure. I just wanted to know what they were doing and what they were doing with our age children. They were so excited that someone from the United States was interested in what they were doing that I was actually invited to attend. Unfortunately, the actual conference started the day we left that hotel. But I'm going to
Go back next year?
Well, actually, it's going to be in Budapest, I think, next year.
Even better.
But as far as we've gotten here in the U.S. and especially in Napa, they're having these summits in Europe, in places like Italy, that's now in the middle of a populist movement that doesn't welcome the LGBTQ community, and they're holding it there. So although I'm proud of what our community has done, we've got a long way to go. And I'm going to actually ask the district if they won't send me to Budapest in a couple of years. No, not really. Just so you know, I read all my emails, the school emails, while I was gone. I was kept informed. I answered most of them. One of them wasn't worth answering, so I just kind of kept it as I'm going to frame it.
I'm still mad.
Yeah. And I was able to attend graduations until jet lag caught up with me. So I'm glad to be back. I honestly missed doing this, and I'm glad that we're all here.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, trustees, and thank you to all the attendees here this evening, those that already left the room and those that might be watching on our YouTube channel. I want to echo everything that all the board members to my left shared around graduation. This was my first round of graduations as the NVUSD superintendent, And, you know, as a superintendent of schools, I think that it is just sort of the culminating, you know, events, really. It was a marathon, I think, for all of us. It was a graduation marathon, running from graduation to graduation. I tell my family it's sort of like tax season for an accountant, and they know to just hunker down and not really see me. But I have the support from them at home, because they know the joy that it brings to me as an educator and a leader in a school system, because this is really, we are in the business of graduation, and it is our goal to make sure that our students, you know, graduate, and really beyond graduation. It's that moment in time where we get to, you know, stop and pause and celebrate our students, that they hit this important milestone and that they're moving into that next phase, whatever that next step might look like for them. And we hope that our school system has opened doors of opportunity for them beyond what they could ever imagine, and that is always the goal. I want to thank the trustees for their stamina, because it took a lot of stamina to go graduation to graduation. And I do want to also recognize that I attended 2 of the middle school promotions, and that's always a lot of fun too. I was at ACMS in American Canyon with Trustee Shunk, and like Trustee Water had mentioned, at Silverado, not able to attend all of the middle school promotions, but I'll rotate that annually. And it was great also to just see our 8th grade families and the excitement that they feel as their students kind of take the next step into high school, and close that sort of K-8 experience and go into the important phase of high school. In this same time, not only did I attend all the NVUSD graduations, but my own daughter graduated from high school on Monday the 3rd. And so that was before all of the NVUSD graduations. And so now that I've experienced a high school graduation as a parent, I think it really sort of deepens every graduation that you attend after that, high school graduation that you attend after that, because you understand as a parent how critical of a juncture that is, and what an important milestone it is, and what a big step it is for your student and for your entire family. I'm trying not to get emotional. Also in the last couple weeks, through all of that celebration, I also want to let the public know that we celebrated our administrators. We had our closing session with all of our administrators, our central office administrators, all of our assistant principals and our principals. We had the opportunity to come together as a management team, and I just really, I have to speak really, really highly of our administrators here. I think one of the things that has made one of the deepest impressions as your first year superintendent is the quality of our administration here in the Napa Valley Unified School District. So many of them are products of the school system. So many of them are current parents in the school system, or their students have graduated out. And so I think with that comes just a deeper sense of commitment to our schools. And they did an extraordinary job. They're still kind of in the process of that, of closing the school year. And I really, really want to thank them for all of their hard work. I would just like to take a minute to recognize them. You know, our teachers also had a tremendous job closing up their classrooms and going through all of that. So it's just a lot of hard work that goes into a school system when you're closing and preparing for the summer. That's a nice transition to sort of my last statement, is that while schools are shutting down, and our newly appointed Assistant Superintendent, Mike Pearson, will be leading, along with his administrative team, the hard work that happens this summer, basically immediately, around getting our campuses ready for the 1920 school year. You know, I want to wish them the best of luck, because as everyone's powering down, they're sort of powering up. And it's a really, really intense job to get schools ready for the upcoming school year in such a short period of time. And so I look forward to providing him and his team all the support that they need to execute on that successfully, so that when school opens up, the gates of school open up in the fall, our campuses are student and family ready. And I also want to let everyone know that the work at the central office doesn't really quiet down too much either. We'll be, you know, some of us will be taking 1-week vacations, few days here and a few days there. But we do, as you will hear tonight, we do have a lot of work to continue to do around our budget. And we know that, as you heard in the opening public comments tonight, that we have some, tough decisions and challenges to consider through the budget development and budget implementation process. And even though it is summertime, we are committed through these challenging issues that are tethered to, the budget. We are willing to stay committed to ongoing proactive communication. So, like I said, we will be here Monday night, even though it's summer, to open up the dialogue with the impacted school communities around the small school, a potential small school closure issue. We will be proposing very shortly and publicizing a date in July to go back out to American Canyon and have a discussion around the reconsideration of the middle school. And so, despite the fact that these are hard issues, it's summertime, we'd love to take a break and in anticipation of the school year. We know that these are really sensitive topics, and the community wants to continue to hear what is the current state of affairs around all of those, especially those two critical topics. And so we will continue to communicate through the summer. We will even hold some community engagement, because what we want the community to know, despite the fact that we have to make these hard decisions, is that we are committed to being very transparent, very honest, very clear around the what and the why, and making sort of our thinking very visible as we have to make these tough decisions to make sure that we keep the district fiscally solvent. So thank you for your time and attention tonight. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Facilities and bond program update.
Good evening, President Hurtado and trustees and Dr. Musetti. We have two things we want to show you tonight. One is we wanted to give you an idea of what the new website looks like for Measure H. So Kelly Jurgensen from Van Pelt Construction is just kind of scrolling through it. As you can see, it's been updated with the help of Q Communications, as well as the information, as well as some help through my department, Jen Gibb and Kelly Jurgensen. So we have clicks on here for what is Measure H. You can continue to scroll down. It's a little slow on our mouse up here. How schools are funded, and then our district bond team that we have. Then all the way at the bottom, we have three kind of areas that we focus in on with our bond. All the way down to the bottom, Kelly. I think it's, yep. Is school safety and modernization, and new construction and improvements, and then technology. So we hope that the public, as well as our staff, will find these new links here much more user-friendly and helpful to understand more about our Measure H bond program. Okay.
Thank you.
And then secondly, we do have a short little video. Many of you mentioned about the central kitchen, but there's probably folks out here in the audience who didn't go to the central kitchen. So it's about 6 minutes long. So we'll just give you an idea of what the central kitchen opening looks like, as well as what the central kitchen looks like. So go ahead and play that, Kelly.
Thanks everybody for coming today to our grand opening of our central kitchen. This is a very exciting time for all of us here in the Napa Valley Unified. Napa, City of Yountville, and the City of American Canyon to have this fabulous facility. Let's give it up again one more time for our Director of Food Service, Randy Driverless.
Welcome. I'm so proud to be able to show off this facility tonight. Really, we've been working on this. There's multiple people that have been involved since the second week I moved to town almost 2 years ago. So we've only been open for about 6 weeks, but we've seen some great things happen already. A few of our accomplishments are we've been able to cut an hour off of our cook time, our cook hold time in the morning. We've been able to utilize the modern equipment that we have here to work together as a team to become more efficient and improve our food quality. And those three items have directly related to an increase of participation just in the past 6 weeks. And overall, this past year, we've been able to increase our participation by 10% over last year. Measure H for the funding of this building. I want to thank our wonderful school board and district administration for all the support that they've shown NOSH over the past 2 years as we work towards becoming a sustainable, self-operated program here in the school district. And first and foremost, I wanted to thank my staff. I've got 82 wonderful employees, whether they're working at this facility or out at 28 of our sites. They're hardworking, they're dedicated, and they're really that bridge between the good food that we're serving and the kids that we're serving it to. So thanks to all of them.
So welcome. I am so excited to be here in my first year as superintendent of the Napa Valley Unified School District. This is really a tremendous gift. A lot of you may know, some of you may know, some of you may not know that the school board boldly and courageously adopted a strategic plan in December of this last year. And goal 1 is about student learning, achievement, and access. And the connection to Brandy's work in food services is nested in that first goal. We don't typically think about food services in a goal around student learning, achievement, and access, but I challenge us as a community to nest it there, to connect it and intentionally and explicitly link it there. Because the bottom line is if kids aren't eating healthy food, they are not learning ready when they suit up and show up every day for their classroom teachers. And I brag about it everywhere that I go in superintendent arenas, that we were so bold to take the risk, because it's a risk to bring in a self-operated program, to take the risk, but that our students were worth that risk. That what our students eat every day is worth the risk. And here we are making all of the decisions to make sure that this program remains viable and sustainable and can continue to transform lives day in and day out. So thank you for your support. Thank you for your votes. And remember that this facility and now what students are eating every day essentially is Measure H at work every day and potentially in perpetuity. Because it's this facility that will be able to make sure that our kids are eating those healthy foods. And that's pretty inspirational to think that a bond project will transcend time in that way through what our students eat because of what this facility can provide. So on behalf of the school board and myself, I just want to say thank you and congratulations. This is pretty epic.
Welcome. I want you all to look around. This is really, truly impressive. Dedication to healthy foods, our student needs, and the facilities to make the magic happen are the key ingredients to this recipe of success. On behalf of the Board of Trustees, we want to thank Brandy for her vision and her fortitude. The dedicated staff of NOSH that worked so hard on behalf of our students, our committed facilities team, and our generous community for supporting the power of Measure H. We applaud all that worked so diligently to bring healthy foods to Napa Valley Unified. We are on the cutting edge of food service, and the beneficiaries are our children. So to everyone in this room, a job well done. This kitchen, in function and symbolism, stands as our commitment to our students' achievement by providing healthy foods for healthy learning. I've had the pleasure of dining at many of our school cafeterias as well as NOSH catered functions, and we are really fortunate. It is yet another level of care that contributes to the overall success and well-being of our students. Change takes thoughtful and courageous actions. We should pride ourselves in how we value our students, what they eat, and the impact of providing healthy food. This is change. This is impactful. This is NVUSD.
This place could not have happened without the organization and the hard work of several people, and so I need to go through a list of acknowledging the individuals, some of who are actually here today, who spent countless hours going through all the things that they need to do to bring this to life, this magnificent facility. We also again want to thank the voters, Measure H. If we did not have this without this renovation, we would not be having this central kitchen. So thank you, all of you who supported Measure H. Big smile, 2, 3. Yay!
Okay, and then finally, yeah, we can give a round of applause, yes. And then lastly, I had the honor of taking Dr. Musetti out to two of our construction sites. I think it was last Friday. We went to Snow Elementary School and River Middle School, and she got to see the progress that's happening at both those sites, and I think came away very impressed with the new facilities that will be happening here in the very near future. So that concludes our report.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments? Good. We'll move on to the consent agenda. Background information on these items is provided to the board prior to the meeting. A common motion takes action without discussion on roll call vote unless discussion of an item or items is requested by a board member or members.
I'd like to request H1D contract for E-rate compliance.
Okay. So with the exception of item H1D, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
It's been moved by Mr. Shunk, seconded by Ms. Gonzalez Mares.
Aye.
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 Item H1D.
So as I understand item H1D is that we're trying to make sure that the E-rate program, which is, I believe, a program that allows us to participate in funding from the federal government for internet access at our schools. I wanted to know how much do we get from the E-rate program, and does it make sense to be spending $30,000 to get that money?
I'm sorry, I think I'm the one that's making the noise with the microphone. The wire's a little glitchy. So, first of all, the E-rate consultancy contract is something that we renew annually. It's there's a lot of just administrative work and making sure that we file all the forms correctly, that we apply for the discounts that we're eligible for, and that we actually are able to continue to get the funding that we're eligible for. So there are two categories. There's a Category 1 and Category 2 funding. Category 1 covers the discounts that we get for our internet and data services. It used to cover phone services, but that is no longer part of E-rate. And we get a discount, we get a substantial subsidy from the government for that. So that part of the E-rate program is something that all school districts participate in, and it subsidizes our data, our data use of data across our district by between 60 and 80%. So it's a substantial discount. The Category 2 portion of the E-rate program allows us to discount equipment that we purchase for servers, for switches, for all of the things that are sort of on the backbone of our network. And we apply annually for the things that we think that we're going to do. So when we, for example, went out to do our wireless upgrade, we applied for all of the equipment that we thought we were going to need to purchase, and we got discounts on that equipment, which allowed us to buy that equipment at a discounted rate and save the district money. So I can get you the totals. I can tell you what those amounts are. I don't have them right off the top of my head.
But Mr. Damico, we're talking in the millions.
Yes, it's a substantial amount of money. Thank you.
All right. Well, with that, I think I would move then to approve this item.
Moved by Mr. Gracia, seconded by Mr. Shunk.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Discussion items. So we changed the agenda a bit, and so we have item I3.A, the Citizens Bonds Oversight Committee Measure H Annual Report for fiscal year 2017 and 18, presented by the Chair, Mr. Kevin Brooks.
President Hurtado, trustees, Dr. Musetti, fellow citizens of Napa, we are here tonight to present our annual report for the fiscal year July 2017 through June of 2018. First, I'd like to introduce some fellow committee members in the audience. So, Dr. Kim Williams, current co-chair. I personally appreciate Kim's direct communication style and her academic rigor. And then also with us tonight is Skip Kaiser, who has served the community in various functions on various bond oversight committees for many, many years. We have nicknamed him the committee's honorary sage, as well as literary master. So currently we have 7 members on the Independent Citizens Bond Oversight Committee. The period we are covering, at that time we had 10 committee members, so we are always looking for new volunteers. The district's strategic plan has a couple goals: robust communication, which was spoken to earlier, as well as proactive and effective and efficient asset management, and our annual report tonight is to speak to that. So a little background on Measure H. Measure H was passed in June of 2016, admittedly by a narrow margin by the voters of Napa. It included $269 million in general obligation bonds. It included a list of projects that was a subset of a larger facilities master plan at that time. And it was issued in follow-up to the August 2014 earthquake, so it included a variety of seismic retrofit projects, fire life safety projects, infrastructure upgrades, as well as technology upgrades. 35 million of the 269 million are earmarked for technology projects. For the period covered by this annual report, $150 million of bonds, roughly 56%, have been sold. The remainder, as of the period covered by this report, at that time have not been sold, although they were recently approved by the board to be sold. Since the original passage of the bond measure, there have been 2 cycles of updates to the facilities master plan, one in 2018 and one in 2019, just recently. So, who are we and what do we do? We, again, are a series of masochistic volunteers that volunteer our time. We meet every other month to have lively and robust discussions. We are members of the community. We are on the front lines to take incoming from fellow community members about everything related to the district, even items outside of the charge of the Measure H committee. And we are the ones that hear, boy, you guys are having a rough time, or we are the ones at the gyms that get accosted and have, I think, barbells thrown at our feet. Was that true? In any case, what our charge is we are here to inform the public. We are here to review expenditures, and we are here specifically tonight to comment on our annual report. So, Section 3 of the committee's bylaws, which were drafted by the board, speak to our responsibilities and duties. Again, we are here to inform the public about the goings-on of the expenditures around the Measure H funds. We are to review the expenditures of Measure H. However, that does not mean, nor is it humanly possible, to review every single expenditure for pencils and 2x4s. And tonight we are here to speak specifically to our obligation and responsibility of our annual report, again for the period of July 1 of 2017 through June 30th of 2018. That annual report is made up of 2 key points. essentially a statement which is statutorily required associated with the issuance of general obligation bonds or bonds in general for school construction, whether or not the district is in compliance, and as well as the summary of the proceedings of the committee's activities over the past year. And for your reading pleasure, I'm sure you all have read every page of the 255-page report. That is all included within that report. So it's exciting times for school bond construction in the state of California, and specifically the budgets related to school bond constructions in the state of California. In Napa, there have been 4 bonds issued over time, beginning in 1998, and they total over $570 million of money that has been invested, that has been supported by the citizens of Napa in investing in the capital infrastructure of the Napa Unified School District. So a couple things about the implementation plan updates. Again, August 24th of 2014 was good for the California Geological Society and their scientists to redraw fault lines. It was not good for Napa Valley, in as much as 3 schools were in the near vicinity and or on fault lines. So 3 projects, specifically Snow Elementary School, Napa Junction Elementary School, and Stonebridge, are those projects located in and around fault lines directly, as well as seismic upgrades required by AB 300 associated with Valley Oak and West Park. So roughly 41% of the $269 million is associated with seismic upgrades. The 2019 facility master plan that was recently approved by the board in April, in addition to the seismic upgrades, also breaks out emergency projects, projects that need to happen, capital improvement projects that need to happen. For example, upgrades to mechanical systems, as well as growth and consolidation projects, including Willow Elementary School project, which was completed last year, combining Salvador and El Centro, as well as the River Charter School, or the River School now, which construction of which will be done in August, and River will move from Harvest to its new campus location with the beginning of the January semester after the IT cabling is completed by the district. Again, we said that it's exciting times for managing budgets. This is a chart that we, in conjunction with staff, put together showing the cost basis for the 4 bond measures over time. What is interesting is if you compare Measure H to Measure G in particular, you see that there is tremendous cost escalation during the period of time that Measure H is going underway, as compared to the Great Recession time of Measure G. And in some respects, Measure H is a more complicated bond measure to implement because it is really a combination of large projects, Measure G type projects, as well as a variety of small projects similar to Measure M projects. This graph is a breakout of the cost escalation, and again, we talked about this last year, and there's been lots of talk about it, but it's a breakout of the cost escalation specific to when the original 2014 Facilities Master Plan was put together, which was then included in the ballot measure of June of 2016, and those projects are now being implemented in 2017 to 18 time period. So specifically, if you compare the cost escalation from 2014 to 2016 of 3%, for the period covered by this report, we're now at twice that rate of 7%. Specifically, we're now getting the original value of what Measure H was worth in 2014, when the original projects were developed has a budget of $374 million as compared to the original budget of $269 million. So moving on, our annual report is based first and foremost on our actions at our every other month meetings with staff, and we'll see some of those financial reports, but it's also based on third-party auditors' report. And the third-party auditor's report had no findings and stated that the district complied in all material respects with the requirements associated with the Measure H bond program for the fiscal year that our report covers. So last year, when we came before you, we had a series of comments, and we'd like to provide an update on those comments here for you now. First and foremost, we appreciate the effort of staff and the Board of Education. The level of detail and the quantity of financial reports provided by our Energizer Bunny continues to expand, continues to provide additional transparency, continues to generate more robust conversations, but also continues to give us the level of confidence that we have to be the ones on the front lines out in the community. And specific to the report you see in front of you now, this is, we collaboratively, the Oversight Committee in conjunction with staff, developed a series of reports associated with what are the original estimates as opposed to the final costs and the associated changes for both the design and professional services side of the house as well as the construction side of the house, so that we can drill down at any time, and we often do go down rabbit holes during our meetings to ask specific questions, because it is impossible to go through a 10,000-page ledger. But it is instructional and illustrative to chase the bouncing ball on certain issues. All of these reports, by the way, are available online. They are all published in advance of and posted in advance of our meetings to the website. We'll have a test on this afterwards. All right, following up on last year's specific comments, one of the comments, well, the first comment was pay to play. Obviously, the district's procurement strategy, general procurement strategy, precludes that, and the committee did not find any indication that any pay-to-play was happening. However, last year we had recommended that the district undertake a specific procurement policy or a specific policy stating such, and we understand that has yet to take place. Again, this report covers the time period of July of 17 through June of 18. And during that time, no additional sale of bond measures were undertaken. So our comment B is not applicable, or we have no additional comments. We do note that additional staff supplementation in the form of Van Pelp's Construction Services has been brought on. Their contract renewal is on the agenda for tonight. So they are providing additional resources to the district that were not available previously. Item C, again, we're taking volunteers to augment our 7-person committee. We have been able to implement staggered terms, so we have at least one or more folks that have a 1-year term laced in with our regular 2-year term to allow transfer of committee knowledge and continuity between terms. We are still seeking additional bodies to do the heavy lifting. The facilities master plan feasibility, the committee is satisfied with the ongoing efforts to update and bring current and evolve the facility master's plan as things evolve. We are working with staff and feel it is very important that we develop additional reporting to be able to chase the bouncing balls as projects evolve and as programming evolves over time. Again, this report covers July of 17 through June of 18, and during that time there have been no additional school bonds issued, so we have no additional comment on any proposed bond language. Comment F, again, this is from last year's annual report. We do see that the facility master plan has been updated both last year in 2018 as well as in this year in 2019. We do not see the quantitative analysis associated with how decisions are being made as part of those updates. That's not to say that it doesn't exist. We just don't have that visibility and don't understand if there's a cost-benefit analysis that has been done associated with those past updates to the original 2014 Facilities Master Plan program. And similar, we have no further comment on item G at this time. So, similarly to the last year's report, this year's report, we had some additional specific comments. One of the comments was that we, the committee, believe it is beneficial for the district in the interest of transparency and integrity of the audit itself, that the audit for Measure H funds be completely independent. Let me say that differently. The third-party audit of Measure H funds be completely independent and divorced from any collaboration with other third-party audits of general district financial accountancy. This picture is of River, the new River campus. Similarly, in order to achieve some of our goals and to encourage further ability to analyze a third-party audit, we are recommending that a pre-audit meeting be held with the third-party auditor in order to ensure that the committee and the auditor have access prior to the commencement of the audit. Specific comment number, next specific comment is the Measure H funds are specific, obviously, to capital improvements, to CapEx, not to operating costs associated with ongoing operation of the district. Obviously, there is a link there in that if you build something, you have to have the funds to operate it. Similarly, if you want to invest funds in a capital improvement in a capital project, you want to know that you're investing in the long term. Committee recommends that the district ensure that funds that are being invested, Measure H funds that are being invested in CapEx projects or capital improvements projects, account for the changing demographics that are going on in the district, some of which have been spoken about tonight, so that projects are not built that are subsequently abandoned, and capital funds that are invested efficiently, effectively, and wisely. And I'm sorry, those were photos of Willow, which again came online last August. Similarly, the committee recommends and encourages the district and requests that there be a quantitative correlation between planned Measure H expenditures that are earmarked for certain projects and the projected enrollment changes, plus or minus. Again, so that it can be demonstrated to the community that there's a quantitative basis for making the investments of the Measure H funds. And that, again, is even more important, similar to the last comment, in as much as the $269 million for Measure H that were budgeted in in 2014 would now cost $374 million. Said differently, we don't have $374 million. So what $269 million would buy you in 2014, it does not buy you in 2018 or 2019. So recognizing that all of you have had the time to read our 255-page report, we, the committee, recommend that the district prepare quarterly executive summaries, simple one-page or two-page executive summaries that allows the committee to communicate with the public at large as far as the goings-on of the Measure H funds, the Measure H projects, status on expenditures, and things of that nature. Again, recognizing that it takes roughly $300,000 a month to run Measure H between internal staff and external staff, and recognizing that the economy of 2018 or 2019 is radically different than 2010, 11, 12, committee recommends that the district, or encourages the district, to consider the form of contract and when making awards relative to the current economic conditions. There is always a lot of attention on the construction side. There is sometimes not as much focus on the design side or the professional services side. And in some cases, it may be more cost-effective for the district to do such services on an hourly rate not to exceed versus a fixed fee. So Napa Junction, this is a picture of or an image of Napa Junction. Napa Junction is being procured as a lease-leaseback project. We recognize that there are benefits to that type of construction contracting structure, many benefits. We recommend that the financials be developed so that the financing costs specific to leaseback be culled out separately, so those benefits, the financial benefits of that type of contracting structure, can be weighed against the additional financial financing costs. So in closing, it is the opinion of the independent Measure H Citizens Bond Oversight Committee that the Napa Valley Unified School District is in compliance with Article 8A, Section 1B3, took me a long time to memorize that, of the Constitution of the State of California with regards to the fiscal year of July 1 of 2017 through June 30th of 2018. We have found the district staff and the Energizer Bunny to be helpful and cooperative, and we see the quantity of financial reports and the level of detail of the financial reports increasing. And we have a link, we have linked the annual report to the website. So back to outreach to the community. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Peach Jar. And hard copies of the tree are available at the Office of School Planning and Construction. Again, we welcome support. There has been robust community presence at the last two meetings, including our special meeting. We had 2 meetings in May. We welcome community involvement. We welcome people coming to these meetings and providing public comment. And we welcome people getting involved, because an involved community is an informed community. So our BHAG for this coming fiscal year is to come before you not in June, but to have a report out by the end of January, predicated on the completion of the third-party auditor's report, so that the committee has time to put everything together. Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments?
First of all, I really want to thank you and your somewhat small committee for taking on an immensely complex task. It's fairly dry, fairly technical, and I am constantly amazed at the quality of work you do. I do have one question for staff, which is, are we doing anything to help recruit more members? Because 7's probably a little thin.
Yes, we continue to ask for staff members to be part of the Citizens Bonds Oversight Committee. We're continuing to come up short with people who want to be part of the committee. It's sort of a thankless job right now, or it is in some ways, and so, but we'll continue to recruit for people out there who are willing and interested to be part of this very worthwhile committee. And it has, as Mr. Brooks has said, having people come out and express their interest, express their opinions about certain things has been very well received the last couple committees, and I'm hoping that maybe some of the folks that have come from those meetings will potentially put their hat in the ring and be part of the committee, because we would welcome them, or the addition.
It may be August before we really have a lot of contact with our parent communities, so it may not be something that, because as people get back into the school year, then they think about how to get involved. The other question I have is perhaps the board direct staff to forward this report to the new CBO and new fiscal director to see how much of the suggestions that you've made can be acted upon, and sort of how to go about addressing them. But we'll be onboarding new fiscal management staff essentially July 1. So it's not far off, but it's not tomorrow either.
I did have one question. What was the thought process about having an auditor that isn't doing another audit for the district? How was that going to help?
We believe that not saying that it can't be the same auditor, just saying that it should be completely independent. So an audit is, let me say it differently. An audit requires a certain sampling set. We believe that there's additional credibility and integrity to the review of Measure H, as well as the reports, the audit, as well as our annual reports, if the auditor's activities, if the independent auditor's activities are limited specifically to the Measure H pool of financials. While that may cost a few more dollars, we believe that lends additional credibility in the context of not only providing the third-party audit, financial and performance audit, but also in light of, in the state of California, the reality is that the financing of capital improvements for schools is done through bonds. And this is not going to be the last bond. And you all will need to go out to the citizenry at large and solicit those bonds at some point in the future. And the ability to do so, and again, then the reality is that to get funding for capital projects in the state of California requires bonds. Buildings don't last forever. We believe that will lend additional credibility, which will help the district in the long run.
I'd like to thank you for the report. I don't find it that dry, and I didn't find it that boring. I read almost all of it. A few years ago, I practically memorized the master plan. I was particularly interested in it because of where I worked next door. And I was so interested, I applied for the committee and got turned down, which was extremely deflating. But I do appreciate the work, and it's not that hard to understand. I mean, you can drive around town and see the work going on right now. It's kind of exciting. I mean, I guess this is so I really want to thank you for taking it so seriously and understand what you mean about the audit, because we do want to avoid any possibility of, even the appearance of a conflict of interest. So, you're right. And I guess this is a question for staff. Do you think we're going to hit all of, be able to cover all of Tier 1 in spite of the increases in materials?
So in the implementation plan that was adopted in April of 2019, most recently, we outlined there that we were not going to be able to hit all the Tier 1 projects that we initially had thought with when the voters passed the bond in 2016. So what we presented to the Board of Education in April was where we were at and what we were going to be able to accomplish for the remainder of the bond. And so we can come back at another time if you'd like us to walk you through that implementation plan and outline you specifically the projects that we're going to be able to cover. But we had done that in the April meeting as well.
Yeah, well, I knew that, but I just want people in TV land to hear it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for telling me that, Trustee Waters.
Again, it is the goal of the committee to work with staff to develop a format of a report that allows ultimately a reconciliation of, at the end of Measure H funds, here are all the projects that were completed at these costs as compared to in 2014, what the original plan was.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks a lot. No, this is a lot of work.
Yeah, and Chairperson Mr. Brooks, I also just on behalf of staff want to thank you. I know it's been a transition with our new leadership in the area of facilities and the bond program, so I want to thank the Bond Oversight Committee for seamlessly working with us through that transition, and we're really, really excited to be working with all of you. And I want to just let you know that we take the recommendations from the Bond Oversight Committee very seriously, and as we consider all of our facilities decisions associated with the bond program, we will be looking at these recommendations and have them at the forefront of the work that we do. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Massetti. That was part of my question, this being my first bond and on the board, just to kind of understand the process and what are next steps. So I wasn't here last year, but I assume these annual reports are coming in. So we're June of 2019, but this is the normal, typical reporting looking back.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. But we're looking at potentially having a report earlier within the next audit. Yes, exactly, in January. That's our goal, and I have talked with staff about that as well as our members of our CBOC. So it doesn't feel like it's so far out from when we did the audit ourselves. And then additionally, as Mr. Brooks outlined, there will be more 1-2-pager updates that we can bring forward to the Board of Education throughout the year to update members. And Mr. Brooks, I think, has something to mention on that. No? Were you going to add something?
I was just going to say the having a completely independent third-party audit will allow, for Measure H, will allow that to be completed earlier, which will allow us to ultimately get this type of report out earlier.
Great. I think in relation to then the recommendations can come earlier. Is that?
Yeah, correct. And so we picked up one of the things I learned when I went to a CalBach training recently with one of the bond oversight members, Barb Franco. That was something that we felt we could bring back and ask our staff and ask our committee to do, and not have it so far out or beyond when the audit was actually done. And so it was I think it was received well by all of our members, and so it's one of our goals to accomplish.
Okay. I mean, I fully support that kind of.
Yeah, and just in response to your inquiry, I think it's important to separate two things. This is a compliance requirement. The annual report from the CBOC is a compliance requirement as delineated in code. What we're referring to in terms of other reports, quarterly reports, or an annual report that we might mail out, for example, to every voting citizen, those would be sort of our communications out to the public. That's a recommendation that's coming from the CBOC, but that is separate from this required annual report that must come from the CBOC. So there's the communication, the district communication that will be developed develop to market to the community what we're actually accomplishing with the bond dollars.
Thank you. I think that's exactly what I wanted to highlight is the level of communication and commitment in addressing and going over every item that this great committee is taking their time on. So thank you for that.
Right. I mean, exactly to your point, Dr. Musetti, that the annual report is pretty dry in and of itself, and we envision that these quarterly executive summaries are going to be more geared, or is going to contain not necessarily the statutory compliance language that's required, but more information that is going to be of interest to the parents. What types of projects are being done at your school? How is the evolution of the master plan evolving? And if I could just add one other comment, ad hoc, it would be helpful in the interest of growing our ranks from 7 to 10 or higher, that as there are discussions out in the community about anything related to the schools, i.e. small schools, potential closures, to throw out an invitation for folks that want to get involved, that we have openings on the Measure H committee.
Will do.
So finally, on behalf of the board, thank you for all the work you've done. Thank you for distilling hundreds of pages of documentation to a 20-minute presentation that even I can understand. I know how difficult it is, even every other month, to get together and look at all these numbers. But I truly, and we truly appreciate all the work you do as a citizen board. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now we move to public hearing of the 2019-2020 budget. This is a public hearing. Final adoption of the district 2019-2020 budget will be scheduled for June 20th. So with that, oh, yes. I'm opening the public hearing. Thank you. I know, this is...
Thank you. Well, good evening, board. So we have a public hearing for the budget. We'll take a couple of moments to kind of highlight the budget. So summary key points, the budget is balanced. Reserve levels are still low but improving. Future cuts are required to deal with declining enrollment, low state funding, rising pension costs, and rising special ed costs. Here's a graph of the enrollment. You can see it as it continues to decline out into 25, 26. There will be, when we revise it for the charter school that came back, there'll be like a little shelf on that graph, but then it'll start dropping again. Those students are in the district, they're just not shown on that graph. Reserve level is, you can see it dropped dramatically a few years ago, and now it's starting to improve just slightly for this year, and hopefully if the board continues with its financial management like we have over the last few months, those numbers will get better and maybe not need as much cash to be borrowed. Some of our assumptions behind the budget: elimination of the middle school 7th period, an elimination of half the 7th period at American Canyon High School. For the future, we're planning on fully eliminating that. Reduction of teachers on special assignment food service, labor efficiencies. That's been a process that's going on, will continue to go on over the next year as positions become vacant. A more efficient transportation schedule. That has not been a big priority as a budget because it's not a huge cost savings, but it's the main issue with that schedule, besides not having all the training on one day, now all teacher training will be on Wednesday, correct? And special ed kids will get to school on time. or mostly on time. In the past, because of the way the bus schedule was, we're getting special ed kids to school late, particularly in American Canyon, so this should help that a lot. An unfortunate increase in liability costs of $600,000, liability insurance because of the fires, and then added staff for special ed. Our special ed program continues to grow in spite of declining enrollment, and that's something the superintendent and the special ed director are going to have to look at. You still there? Can't see behind, can't see her. And on a revenue side, ADA decline, we keep mentioning that. State COLA 3.26, some one-time reduction in STRS costs. Actually, the new state budget shows that to be in the future now, so for a couple of years, so that'll really help the district. So our increase is probably a little bit more than we thought, and as the budget gets revised over the next couple of months, that will be reflected. And then the return of the River Charter School as a traditional public school. Some out-year assumptions. We have certificated reduction of 20 teachers each year to deal with enrollment decline. Administrative reductions are also anticipated. Other costs to reduce staffing operational expenditures to align with enrollment decline. Right size the district. We had many people coming talking about school closures, and essentially that's what that's all about. And additional cuts will be required to improve compensation. So, and then these are the projections. You can see the improvements. We have you can see the numbers there. I don't want to spend a lot of time on numbers because most people don't like to spend time on numbers, but bring you to the bottom, the two bottom lines. One, we've designated salary increases for the 3 years in the future of about $2 million. That's probably not quite enough, but it's close enough for this projection. And then you can see our remaining numbers are still fairly small. In the out year, we're down $500,000, so that's projecting more cuts. Of course, projecting 2 years is also quite difficult, so that's for that. And then future financial issues, that I'm kind of repeating some of the same things, but it's probably worth doing that. Our enrollment's declining. That has to be dealt with. Rising pension costs, small schools. Again, I mentioned that earlier. Small schools have to be dealt with. They're quite expensive. Encroachment by special ed, maintaining competitive compensation. And here's an interesting one. The district, and I want to spend a couple of seconds on this. The district's got its credit rating downgraded 3 times. When we went back out again for the new bonds and for the trans and for the COP, they downgraded us again. And that's all about going back to that graph you just saw a minute ago and the declining ending balance. And they were quite nervous about getting repaid. I think I convinced them that the superintendent was on a good track, and they looked at some of the stories in the newspaper, so even though they may have seemed a little negative, Wall Street liked them. And the low ending balance needs to be raised in our low reserve. So I think we can reverse some of those things over the next couple of years. And then there are some more concrete recommendations. Consider closing small schools, said that earlier. Make sure we have the ADA available before we open a new school. If we have a growth area in the district, they would make sure it's there. Central office reduction to correspond with the enrollment decline. That's a critical issue. You can't just reduce teachers at school sites and not reduce this building. Reduce number of teachers on special assignment. That's kind of a goal of the superintendent. Ensures charter schools are fully self-sufficient. This is happening this year through the hard work of the instructional division, and they've made an effort, and that's why River Charter came back, and NVLA received a letter from me indicating to them that they were not financially solvent. Didn't get it to them in time for the board to take action, but you probably will end up taking action next year, or they will maybe negotiate their comeback. They cannot survive more than 1 more year, given where they are now. And then consider some tax revenue increases for either parcel tax or bond for 2020. So the final steps: close the books, adjust for state budget. We're starting to see state budget information coming in, so in the budget you finally adopt, we'll have some adjustments, some minor adjustments, and will not change the policy direction. And then monitor and adjust according to fall enrollment, and just see how that enrollment comes out. And your new business official is an expert in that area, so he will be looking very carefully in adjusting the budget for that, and adjusting classes and a number of teachers. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you, sir. Trying to decide what level to go at. In looking at the budget, and I read past the slides and
You actually got into that, all those little tiny-
into the budget, but I'm trying not to go down too many rabbit holes. Whatever's happening in adult ed, is it ADA related, or a decline in chargeable classes? Because they used to actually make money, and with AB 86 and getting in bed with the community college, things all changed.
There has been some, since that budget was since we put that budget together, there have been some changes. And so there's the state, in fact, we have a meeting, I believe, tomorrow about that. So there'll be some adjustments to that, just so you know that. And that's just the grant that they're receiving. And as you know, it's distributed around the county. We're the main recipient of it, but the other districts, as well as the county office, are involved in this too. So it's a matter of how it's allocated. And our portion, and I can't remember, but I think just our portion is there in that budget.
All right. Child development. Looks like the budget is about break even, but there's a 20% decline in local revenue and a 30% decline in staffing. Is that right sizing or a change in demand, or?
There's some reduction in staffing, but the main issue there is probably that budget needs to be updated.
Okay.
So I wouldn't be too concerned about that at this point, because I think as the more grants come in, and and some of those programs are run by the county office too. So there's kind of a melding of the two agencies.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, I did not spend a lot of time on the.
Yeah, I mean, they're not.
Fund. That was not one of my.
Yeah, it's not huge absolute dollars.
Right.
But some of the percentage changes are sort of.
Probably when the revised budget comes in September, a lot of that will get cleaned up.
Okay. Self-insurance. I thought we were
We're not self-insured any longer. However,
I understand that, but we have a long tail.
We have an ongoing tail.
Right.
And you're on to a point that maybe I ought to make, is that for your information, there are claims that go back many, many years, and we are responsible for those claims as the district. The claims do not go to the insurance authority. We retain those. They appear to be underfunded. We're not showing that there, but they appear to be underfunded, and that's something the superintendent and I are aware of, and maybe you wanted to get to that, but we're going to.
No, what I couldn't tell is if.
You can't tell from that.
There was a change in accounting policy, procedure, or if there was really something I needed to be more aware of.
Well, that's what I want you to take away from this, is that they appear to be underfunded, and we probably would need to come back to the board in the future with a funding plan.
So the new fiscal team will go sort out their crystal ball and.
Well, and we need to work with
tighten it up.
The insurance authority actually manages the claims.
Okay.
They sort of send us the bill.
Got it. What's changing in the foundation private purpose trust fund?
Frankly, I'm going to have to get back on that one. I have paid no attention to that.
So, there is one semantic beef I have, and it's not the first year, and you're not the first one to hear it from me. But I'll get it out there in the hope that our new fiscal team will flip through the YouTube channel at some point. If we're going to use the slightly inflammatory language of encroachment around special ed, we should use the same terminology around the enterprise funds, which generally should be breaking even, childcare, food service, whatever. If you want to call it something else, like, supported by the district, I don't care, but I find the word encroachment, when it's used only with special ed, a little inflammatory when we have other funds encroaching.
I agree with you on that, and probably we should use the same words for the other two funds, and I would agree with that.
Because in my perfect world, over a couple-year period, food service breaks even. I don't require it every year. Same thing with childcare. These are services and businesses we're in that are not core. They're helpful and supportive, but they are not core to education, and it's things society expects of us. I completely get that. But those service functions should be done on a roughly break-even position over time. So, but that's my dream world, and my bubble is frequently
Well, I
punctured.
want to give the food service department a little bit of credit here. They're making an effort.
Yeah, no.
Increase sales, reduce labor costs, but it's a painful process for them.
Right, and I couldn't tease out in the food service whether, to what extent it's a sales drop or versus sales because of an ADA.
And that's like the mystery that needs to get solved this year. We actually discussed that. So what we're hoping is sales will go up. And the big issue for them is high schools. So if they can increase sales at a high school, usually elementary goes pretty well. It's probably at least breaking even, but the high schools are the problem. And so and the fact that the campuses are open.
Right, but that's like a whole separate discussion.
Oh, yeah.
Got it.
So I don't want to go
All right.
any further.
I think I've hit most of my notes, so I'll pass the baton.
All right. All right, you can close the public hearing.
One thing.
Oh,
I think
yes,
that,
ma'am.
we have talked about. We have talked about the cuts, and some of them are painful, and we've been hearing people for months, grabbing us, exhorting us to save this, to save that, and it's a lot of hard choices. But I think we should be very clear that the central that admin and everything else is going to be experiencing some cuts too. We need to be able to show people that it's indeed across the board.
Right, and one of the things that I have recommended to the new business official and the superintendent is that the continuous process, not wait until next March, but start working on it now, looking at, a position becomes vacant. I think superintendent actually is moving in that direction. As a position becomes vacant, examine that position. If we don't need it or can be transferred somewhere, or somebody transferred into it, make that savings now. Because that makes it a lot easier than trying to wait till March.
Yeah, and I'd like to just comment on that. So thank you, Trustee Water, for bringing that up. Thank you, Paul and the interim team, Cecile, for preparing the budget. Just a couple of comments. As Dr. Desario shared, our budget is balanced, but as he has shown today, and I just need to reiterate it, the balancing of the budget is contingent upon a set of assumptions that are going to require the school board to make some challenging decisions, and we really need to illuminate that. The structural deficit that the school district's been facing, the one that we illuminated at the second interim, was because there were no assumptions around some critical decisions moving forward. And so this budget is balanced, and you see a dramatic reduction in the structural deficit. You see that deficit being closed because the assumptions are nested within there that we are going to make a series of decisions that I've been very clear and transparent around. I've communicated to all employees internally in the school district. I've sent a notice to every parent in the school district around what the critical factors are impacting the budget and what are some of the proposed solutions. And this budget is built upon those same assumptions that I shared both internally and externally. So I just need to reiterate that. Thank you, Trustee Water, for highlighting the reduction of administrative staff at the central office is happening. We are going down administrators at the central office and positions here at the central office, because when you are right-sizing a district, it is important for the central office to model that model. This is not about simply impacting the classified support staff and or teaching positions out at the school, but it also requires the central office to reduce itself in alignment with the declining enrollment. And that work is starting just out of my office. Positions in my office are being looked at, examined, and we are, as administrative vacancies emerge, we are consolidating wherever we can. So this is really challenging work, but we're doing the work comprehensively, we're doing it holistically, and we're doing it with a very, very critical lens, because the bottom line here is to maintain fiscal solvency in this district so that we can continue to control our programs. If the assumptions that are nested within this proposed budget are not enacted, the money's going to have to come from somewhere. So I'd just like to remind the community and staff that it is going to be, the potential of compensation freezes, not keeping our compensation competitive. And it is confusing when school districts give compensation increases during a budget challenge. But our goal is to make decisions that position the school district to continue to make sure that our salaries stay competitive for our administrators, for our teachers, and for our classified support staff, because school districts find themselves in quite a conundrum, especially during a teacher shortage, if their salaries fall behind. Another major lever for school budgets are class size, and then of course our enriching academic and visual performing arts, athletic programs, and we are trying to sort of preserve those investments in our budget, so because we know that that's really those are the things that will impact kids the most and teaching staff the most. And so it's really going to take us looking at these other sort of suggested recommendations that we are considering and that we're going to continue to communicate on. So I want that to be made clear, that although we are pleased with the improvement, the improvements become real when the actions are taken to support the assumptions that this budget is built upon. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. With seeing no one else needing to comment, I will close this public hearing. With that, we move to public hearing and presentation for the local control accountability plan, the LCAP. Oops, let me open that.
As you know, every year, alongside of the budget being presented in public hearing, there is a corresponding presentation of the local control accountability plan, or LCAP, annually at the same time, and then it comes back to the board next week for approval. And I want to highlight that the plan comes in lower than 200 pages, a mere 164 pages of reading delight. So, I can't, wait, oh, there we go. So I wanted to highlight very briefly some of the changes that you'll see in the LCAP moving forward. The LCAP is a 3-year, what they call rolling plan. Every year we review it and update it, but it's a 3-year picture of the district's priorities and interests. And as you know, we have aligned the LCAP to the strategic plan. So instead of seeing 3 goals, which is what we had last year, we now have 6 goals, and they are directly aligned to the strategic plan. And some features and some requirements, and then some features of the LCAP. So some of the requirements of this process is that we do really robust stakeholder engagement every year. And so the time period of the year when I usually, but others as well, will be talking to different groups of interested parties, like our parent advisory, our staff advisory, our union partners and their different meetings. We talk to parents in DLAC and ELACs, and we talk to students as well, and gather input around this process, around the kinds of things we're doing to increase student achievement, and get input and then make adjustments to the LCAP as needed. I've already referred to the annual review of progress. That's that process of getting input from our participants, looking at our progress, where we are making progress, where we're not, and then making adjustments. And that's like the cycle. We are also data-driven in the sense that there are required metrics in the LCAP we have to report on, and we have to review with our stakeholders our progress toward those metrics. And you'll see them in the LCAP. Things like A through G completion rate at the high school level, graduation rate, suspension rate, etc. And of course, academic achievement. The other feature of the LCAP is that it must describe how we're using the supplemental dollars. So the supplemental dollars are those dollars that are provided to the district based on the number of students that are either of 3 student groups: English learners, low income as defined by qualifying for free and reduced lunch, and foster youth. So 3 student groups. And I notice a change in language that the process includes now. We've called that group of students unduplicated pupils across the years since the inception of this process, but there's new language now, and we're seeing high need students. So we're gonna transition to high need students, but the same student groups qualify. And so the LCAP must describe how we use the supplemental dollars. So I have a little bit of a description of the kinds of groups that we've been meeting with every year as we engage in this process. And so we have a lot of really nice feedback. We also, I think we have the parent surveys on there. So we have a parent survey that we've been doing annually. So highlights of the 19 through 2022 LCAP. First, aligned to the strategic plan, so it looks different. We have coherence across different funding sources. So we don't have the entire budget reflected in the LCAP, but you'll see more resources, more different resources that are referred to instead of just supplemental dollars. You'll see references to how we use the title funds or even base funds in some cases. It includes services directed to all students and to the high need students. So in this template, it takes a minute to get used to reading this document because it's a particular template that must be complied with. The state requires that every district use the template that you see when you review the document, and you can make some choices like, is this action or service directed to all students or just some students, all grade levels or just some schools, all schools. So you can check all the check boxes and understand where this action or service is principally directed. One of the other new things that you will see in the LCAP is that there's funding for the 2 new professional development days for teachers and paraprofessionals and administrators. Well, administrators are already paid, so it's just the 2 additional days for teachers and some paraprofessional groups. Continued strategic focus on standards-aligned instruction and curricular materials, training, and support. That's a lot of what we engage in and invest in. And continue to focus on specific supports and engagement of marginalized student groups. A lot of investment in AVID, a lot of investment in English language development, and other support before and after school support for students who are struggling, things of that nature. And on the horizon, continue to focus really clearly on best first instructions, phrasing to indicate like the first time a student is learning a new concept, a new standard, doing the very best we can to ensure that most of the students in the room get the new concept the first time it's taught, within the classroom getting additional support from their primary teacher, and relying less heavily on intervention outside of the classroom. We've got multi-tiered systems of support for both academic and behavioral concerns for that student who does not get what they need in Tier 1, that best first application of instruction and or intervention for behavior, but they need more. And so being able to define that very clearly and then apply the interventions as needed. We have a newer focus, which has not been called out in previous LCAPs, but a real focus on early literacy and ensuring that more of our students are reading proficiently by 3rd grade. We continued the focus on inquiry-based learning, and we've got a long history of a commitment to project-based learning. We're globalizing that approach and using inquiry-based learning to define the work. And kind of continuing to invest in our staff, the most important resource we have for improving student achievement. And around student climate, we still have a lot of investments that are reflected in the LCAP, investments around implementation of restorative justice and restorative practices in general, PBIS, legacy, and continuing to focus on strong student-staff relationships. And a newer focus we haven't really talked about relative to the LCAP is really examining return on investment. So the things that the ways that we are using the supplemental dollars, are they having the impact? Are they having an impact that's relative to the gain or loss of progress relative to the dollars that are applied to that action or service? And that was quick, but if I'm happy to entertain any questions or concerns.
I got to keep it up, you know. So thank you. You managed to squeeze 30 schools into 160 odd pages. It took the county office 131 pages to do the handful of programs that they do. So that's great. At some point in the future, it certainly isn't going to be tonight, can we do a deeper dive on chronic absenteeism, one of the indicators, because it has both fiscal impacts and presumably academic impacts. And I look forward to a discussion at, again, some point in the future on what our framework is and how we'll end up thinking about the return on investment question. Because I have a feeling over the next year there's going to be a lot of discussion outside of the LCAP around that. So beginning to share with the board how we as an institution will think about that, because education is blessed with lots of good ideas and it's benefiting some portion of our students, but it's really hard to tease out the sort of the proportionality of dollars versus impact. So it's one of those discussions that I will find intellectually fascinating, and I'm sure I'll learn a lot.
Thank you.
With regard to the return on investment theme, I would like to see if we could hear something at a future meeting about the return on investment that we're getting with regard to PBIS, as I suspect it's not very high.
I think that we know we've talked about this before, Marianne, is to continue to find ways to engage more stakeholders. And looking at the number of the parent surveys, it's a good number, but I think it's still a small pool. And my interest in that is as we continue to improve with our communication and what we're doing as a district and how the LCAP impacts our community, I think it's absolutely critical to continue to also get input from our families. I think there's a lot of opportunity there for us to learn as to how it impacts our chronic absenteeism and why aren't they enrolling in the free reduced lunch program. So I think that with what we're facing and having been on the board just a little bit longer, I don't want to look back after I'm no longer here to not see that. So I'm just not seeing that as much, and I know that we can grow that, and I know that with our strategic plan, but I do understand that having a strong foundation like our budget and our finances and all that will help us then allow us more time to continue to fine-tune those areas where I know that there is money there, with that kind of engagement, there's money there and opportunity for our institution to continue to grow. So I just, want to reiterate how important that piece of that is. But I thank you for continuing to do that work of engaging with our community. And I think that with that kind of model of thinking that the NVUSD is not a silo, that we are part of a larger community, it's absolutely critical to our own way of even being creative and finding ways of returning our investment.
Thank you.
When we're looking at ROI
set standard parameters that we're going to measure that by, and will those then be issued to us so we understand how we're actually interpreting the data?
Absolutely. We haven't yet defined what the strategy is going to be and the tools that we're going to use, but we'll present them to the board.
All right, thank you.
Well, I'm interested in everything they said, and particularly the chronic absenteeism, because I do know that was something that Dr. Sweeney did take a particular interest in, and we did start making real efforts of getting more kids to be in school and doing our best to recover, the ADA with the Saturday school and that sort of thing. The other thing is, aren't we going to have like a centralized way for people to apply to for the free lunch, for the reduced lunch?
Yes.
So that should pull up our numbers,
Yes.
I think. That would be good.
That's right, Trustee Water.
Yeah.
To give you credit, Mary, you did address on page 7 of the 164 pages that the greatest need was to identify and focus on chronic absenteeism. So it is embedded in the document that this was a priority, just to, the 7,000 people that I know are watching, that that was made very clear in the document, early on in the document, while we were still interested.
Yeah.
I will highlight that the chronic absenteeism indicator is new, and I think that's what's lifting it out as an area of focus. We've always had to report on attendance rate, and you've heard about that for a long time. Chronic absenteeism has kind of taken a back seat, but now obviously it is not, and so we will have to pay attention to it.
Marianne, I'd like to thank you. This is the first time in 6 years that I don't author an LCAP, and it's because I have you. So thank you. I know after doing it for the last few years, I know the amount of work that goes into that for the instructional services team. And I also want to recognize that it is sort of historic, and it'll continue to remain historic in its infancy, because it's really only been in place 6 years now, that it does require the instructional division to work more closely with the business office, which I think is a real plus of Governor Brown's reform, because in the past, they're over there. Are you boxing? So before, those divisions often worked in silo around budget development and program development, and so it's been my pleasure over the course of the last couple of months to see the interface between the instructional division and the business division, and de-siloing the work to make sure that we can get to these concepts around return on investment. So thank you for all your labor, your hard work, your commitment. I appreciate it.
And on behalf of the board, please thank you and your staff for all the work. And this will be up for approval at our next meeting. So any other comments? Seeing no one approach, I close the hearing. An introduction of high school core and supplemental instructional material recommended for English, career tech, and mathematics. It's an introduction. We had a crate full of books on the table. I saw Mr. Shunk reading them. On to item J.
We didn't discuss them, though.
Did you want to discuss them?
I did. I wanted to ask a question.
Sure.
I wanted to know what the purpose that we hope to achieve by potentially implementing these various curricula are.
In most cases, the top group of materials are all for core academic subjects. The bottom group are supplementary materials, which are not required. They are the choices of the instructors with agreement across the school's academic curriculum council representative. And so the purpose of these titles are affiliated with a course called Ethnic Studies, and there are a variety of genres, a variety of readings that not every course, every student at every school would not read all of those items. The teacher would select from among those that are approved as supplementary materials.
And so as to the core subjects, then why are these texts better than the ones that we're using now?
In some cases, it's about an edition that has expired. The current edition is no longer as updated as the course needs in terms of things in science and in history sometimes, the material has evolved, and so they need new textbooks as a result. And in some of the courses here, you're approving courses that are affiliated with the dual enrollment, the ones that are labeled college algebra, college trigonometry, and college calculus are all textbooks that are used by Napa Valley College for those students who are going to be taking the courses on our campuses next year. So we have to adopt them in order for us to be able to use them.
Thank you.
Sure.
I apologize for jumping the gun, Mr. Gracio. Okay. So, move on to J. And is that an announcement?
No, it's just for your knowledge, we've transitioned, so just reading the item aloud, and then if trustees have questions, but if not, we'll just go through the action items.
Okay, item J1A, global adoption of revised Napa Valley Unified School District Board Policies, Index 12 through 18, Napa Valley Unified School District 0 Series, philosophy, goals, objectives, comprehensive plans, community relations, administration series, business and non-instructional operations, personnel, students, instruction.
I'll move for the global adoption of these stated policies.
I second and appreciate you and President Tado's work on this particular action item again.
I can't co-second, but I agree.
I also agree that it was nice of you to take a lot of time to put up with that.
That's because you're so venerable.
In some circles, I'm considered a policy geek.
Okay.
So,
Good job, thank you.
It was moved by Mr. Shunk, seconded by Ms. Gonzalez Mares. All in favor?
Aye.
Item J1B, agreement for the CSBA Good Beginnings Governance Workshop 2.
I'll move.
I second.
Was that Mr. Gracia?
Yes.
And moved, Ms. Jankowicz seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
J1C, contract with School Loop for district web services.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Shunk, seconded by Mr. Gracia. All in favor?
Aye.
On to J.2A, Resolution 1930, authorizing the executive and execution and delivery of documents relating to the sale and delivery of a lease purchase agreement.
I'll move.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Gracia, seconded by Mr. Shunk.
Aye.
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 J.2.B, SPC 3.1-20, Van Pelt Construction Services, Measure H.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Mr.
Sure.
Yes.
Mike, I just, and Kelly, this is big picture. Is there an evaluation process that's in place for Van Pelt? When you consider we're spending about $3 million a year over 3 years, it's a $10 million investment. I know we use things like 360 feedback system in the past and self-evaluation to kind of gauge performance. It might give us, feedback, increases accountability, theoretically could possibly increase efficiency, both financially and in execution. I don't know if this could be contractual, but it might be something we could talk about as far as being able to give important feedback to stakeholders and understand what's being done on an ongoing basis and get feedback from our current stakeholders that are within the district. So anyway, it's something to possibly consider.
Yes, Trustee Jankowicz, I can work with Kelly Jurgensen and Ben Pelt's services regarding some sort of evaluation process, and then we can bring back something that to discuss with the Board of Education as to sort of what we're looking at, and then potentially implement that if that would be acceptable.
So it was moved by Mr. Shunk, seconded by Ms. Gonzalez-Mares. All in favor?
Aye.
Next, charter school finance and operational agreement and facilities use agreement between Stonebridge School and Napa Valley Unified School District.
I'll move.
Second.
Mr. Gracia moves, Ms. Water seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Charter school facilities use agreement between Napa Valley Language Academy and Napa Valley Unified School District.
I'll move.
Mr. Gracia moves, Ms. Jankowicz seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Acceptance of River Middle School relinquishment of charter and transition to traditional school.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Mr. Gracia moves, Ms. Gonzalez-Mares seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
May I just say that this is a monumental agreement between the Unified School District and a former charter school to move into the fold. The agreements about how that would be done, I know it took a lot of effort, a lot of wringing of hands on both sides, so I want to thank Superintendent Massetti and everyone else who was involved in this. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And thank you, President Hurtado. And we want to thank the River School community. It is a challenging transition going through this process, but we appreciated their collaboration, and we look forward to working with them in the capacity of traditional district school effective July 1. And so I also want to thank all the staff for the hard work that had to go into that. We know it's been a long process this year, but we look forward to being a very supportive anchor to the school as they move through this transition and then actually physically move into their new facility in January. So,
thank you. Approval of agreement between Napa Valley Education Foundation on the Move, Napa Valley Vintners, and NVUSD for capital funding for a family resource center on our new Napa Junction facility.
I move to approve.
Moved by Ms. Gonzalez-Mares, seconded by Mr. Shunk. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Good work. Yeah. Yeah, you can do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got a lot of candy up here.
Yeah, we thought this,
yeah.
M&Ms.
Item J3.A, resolution to eliminate classified positions for the 2019-2020 school year.
Move.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Gracia, seconded by Ms. Gonzalez-Mares.
aye.
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 Move on to J4A, approval of agreement between Hanover Research and Napa Valley Unified School District.
I have some questions about this item. What is it that we're hoping to accomplish by getting this research capability?
There are a few things that, in a few ways, it will assist us. When we do grant writing, one of the ways that this affiliation will help is that we can commission a study that we can incorporate into whatever topic we're trying to understand better and write into our grants. It gives us an opportunity for new ideas around models and strategies, and it spans beyond instruction. An example of a study that we could commission is what are the staffing ratios, the market standard of staffing ratios for custodians We can commission a lot of different topic studies. They do program evaluation, they do data analytics, and they also do, they have strong validity surveys that we can commission from them as well.
Is there a number of surveys that we're signing up for, or do we have an unlimited number?
It is a membership, and so once as a member, anyone in the organization we deem should have access to it can contact Hanover Research and commission information that they need for their work. So it's open to a variety of, their model is that they do one project at a time, but we don't have a limit on projects across the year.
I think too, to potentially connect it to the LCAP, this will probably provide an opportunity around some of the accountability and return on investment analysis that we'll be looking at for the strategic plan and for the LCAP.
Okay. All motion to approve.
I'll second.
Aye.
Approval of services contract between Precision Translation and Napa Unified School District.
I'll move it.
I'll second.
Moved by Mr. Shum, seconded by Ms. Jankowicz. All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
Contract for services between Napa Valley Unified School District and the Napa Learning Center.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Shum, seconded by Mr. Gracia. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Contract between Thea Hansen Consulting and Napa Valley Unified School District.
So I'm going to ask the obvious question, why do we have three contracts for the next 4 or 5 items? Is it all, who's funding it? Actually, as far as that goes?
That is correct. Several of the contracts are site-based, and so they are contracting directly with the consultant to provide on-site coaching. She's the consultant who provides coaching around the Bridges math that we use in TK through 5.
Okay.
And she also is the consultant through the Math Center for Bridges, the curriculum, and we are contracting with her to provide workshops for both principals and teachers in the professional development days. So there's 3 different ways we partner. Sites are partnering directly. We are partnering NVUSD with the consultant to provide specific workshops. And she is the consultant that is secured by Napa Learns through the Accelerated Math Project.
All right.
So those are the 3 types of relationships.
Got it. In that case, I'll move for item J4D.
Second.
I'll second.
Moved by Mr. Shum.
Seconded by many.
By Ms. Gonzalez Mata. I should have said, Robert Jenkins, the only one that didn't second. All in favor?
Aye.
Approval of agreement between Thea Hansen Consulting and Phillips Elementaries.
Move. I'll move.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Gracia, seconded by Mr. Shum. All in favor?
Aye.
Approval of agreement between Chris Hatchett and the Napa Unified School District for Vichy Elementary School.
So,
Second.
I would just like to say before we vote that many of these contracts don't seem to have much specificity in the way of when and how often someone is going to be showing up at the school. I would like to see that better defined in the contracts in the future. And with that, I think we're good to vote.
It's that really, can we respond to that comment? Just kind of say, well, I don't know that level of detail is required for our staff to invest their time on that.
If it's not in the contract and it just says they're going to provide some stuff, then they could show up once and we would never have any recourse. So that's my concern.
Yeah, so we'll take the feedback and we'll look into it.
Okay, it was moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Approval of agreement between Napa STEM and Vichy Elementary.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Shunk, seconded by Ms. Gonzalez Mares. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Approval of agreement between Pia Hansen and Napa Valley Unified School District for McPherson Elementary.
I'll move.
So, so, moved by Ms. Gonzalez Mares, seconded by Mr. Gracia. All in favor?
Aye.
Approval of contract between Napa Valley Unified School District and Ginger Giftakis. Ginger Giftakis.
Good job.
Yeah? Wow. What a guy. Yeah, actually, I visited the Greek islands, so.
I'll move the item if you don't have a motion.
I don't, I was entertaining myself here. Moved by Mr. Shunk, seconded by Mr. Gracia. All in favor?
Aye.
I'm losing control here.
We'll just have to bring back the cell.
Yeah, there you go. Memorandum of Understanding between Napa Learns and Napa Valley Unified School District for the 2019-2020 year.
I'll move.
Moved by Mr. Gracia, seconded by Ms. Gonzalez Mares, because I like her better. All in favor?
Aye.
Agreement between agreement between New Tech Network and the Napa Valley Unified School District.
I'll move.
I thought maybe I hurt Joe's feelings. Moved by Mr. Gracia, seconded by Mr. Shunk. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Adoption of new and revised high school courses of study recommendations for English, career, tech education, and mathematics.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Gonzalez Mares, seconded by Mr. Gracia. All in favor?
Aye.
Agreement between California Human Development and Napa Valley Adult Education.
Wait, what?
Was that moved by Ms. Jankowicz? Seconded by Mr. Shunk. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Agreement between the University of Texas and Napa Valley Unified School District.
I'll move.
Moved by Mr. Gracia, seconded by Mr. Shunk. All in favor?
Aye.
Agreement between Hinge Education and NVUSD.
I'll move it.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Gracia, seconded by Ms. Gonzalez Mares. All in favor?
Aye.
Agreement between, Hinge Education and NVUSD for 2019-2020 professional development.
I'll move.
Moved by Mr. Gracia, seconded by Mr. Shunk. All in favor?
Aye.
Agreement for intern supervision for counseling psychology.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Gonzalez Mares, seconded by Mr. Gracia. All in favor?
Aye.
Regional Center Consultant Agreement.
I'll move.
Moved by Mr. Gracia, seconded by Mr. Shunk. All in favor?
Aye.
Agreement between Crystal Rose Spandicino and the Napa Valley Unified School District for Browns Valley Elementary.
I'm all in favor of next-gen science, so I'll move the item.
Moved by Mr. Shunk, seconded by Ms. Water. All in favor?
Aye.
We could tell President Hurtado you've just been in Italy there.
I studied Italian for a year. The first time I got into a conversation with a native-speaking Italian, I was done. They really speak Italian in Italy. Bay Area Air Quality Control Management District will provide grant funds to Valley Oak High School for environmental education and participation in habitat restoration at Oxbow Park.
I think this is a neat program where they're going to plant an orchard to harvest the fruit from, so I would like to motion to approve that.
Moved by Mr. Gracia, seconded by Ms. Gonzalez Mares. All in favor? Aye. Memorandum of Understanding between Napa County Office of Education and Napa Valley Unified School District for Career Tech Education Programming.
Okay. I'm going to tap the brakes on this because it reaches my WTF level. So, under disputes, disagreements between the county superintendent and the LEA, which would be us, concerning the meeting requirements and performance of this MOU shall be subject to the final determination in writing by the county superintendent. So one of the parties to dispute gets to determine how the dispute turns out.
Good eye, Trustee Shunk.
This is good for us how?
Would you like to pull the item?
You know, on the one hand, I want some sort of MOU on CTE. There is one other paragraph that has me scratching its head because I don't know what it actually means, which is the non-discriminatory services. The LEA agrees that all goods and services under this MOU shall be available to all qualified persons, and it lists an enumerated set of protected classes. How come that doesn't apply to NCOE?
Those are great questions. So what we can do, Trustee Shunk, is if you pull the item, we have one more board meeting next week. We can get our agenda, we can agendize this for tomorrow, work with the county between now and Thursday, and then attach a revised MOU after some discussions with the county. Can you facilitate that, Ms. Valles? Thank you.
So does anybody need a motion to table or anything Robert's rulesy like that?
Yeah.
So the motion to table item J.4.U, moved by Mr. Shunk, seconded by Ms. Gonzalez-Mares. All in favor?
Aye.
So we'll aim to bring that back for the 20th.
Aye.
Marks Builders, Inc., change order number 5,
I'll move.
moved by Mr. Gracia, seconded by Ms. Gonzalez-Mares. All in favor?
Aye.
Award of contract to Velvet Design for landscape picnic with landscape. Civil engineer services on field replacement project.
I'll move.
Moved by Mr. Gracia. Seconded by Ms. Jankowicz. All in favor?
Aye.
Approval to call for request for proposals for California multiple award schedule contract.
Yeah, I'll move.
Moved by Mr. Gracia. Seconded by Ms. Jankowicz. All in favor?
Aye.
That brings us to additional suggestions and comments report from board members and the superintendent. So,
I have one.
yes.
And I communicated earlier with Dr. Musetti. You know, we approved a lot of items, relating to wellness and mental health, and we frequently have visitors to our podium entreating us to do something, for our students. And what I'd like to do is sometime next fall is just have maybe, if it wouldn't be too much trouble, just have a brief exposition, for the public showing, what is going on, how many wellness centers we have. I run into them on my school visits and all that, but it'd be nice to have it all down. And I know you're all busy. And maybe somehow we could find out some of the source of the anxiety and unwellness that our students are experiencing. Thank you.
Ms. Water.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, there is an interesting podcast that I listened to the other day while I was out walking, written by a counselor and a therapist who worked at Penn State, talking about the anxiety, the stress level that our students and our children are working under, and the one quote that is etched in my mind is that we are 20th century adults raising 21st century children, and what we value, what isn't necessarily what drives our children to succeed. And I think it's a great idea. I've mentioned once before when this topic came up that because we are the largest agency in the county that works with children and whose one of the central values that we have is the health and safety of our children, that we really should do exactly what you've just suggested and highlight not only the services that we provide our students, but the partnerships that we've developed over time with agencies that also address those needs and stresses. So
thank you.
In relation to what, relative to what Cindy just asked, does the Ed Foundation, it was predicated, the wellness centers were predicated on a grant from the Ed Foundation, correct? And if so, do they have to submit data on that grant? I mean, have we ever seen that data, what they have to submit, what the data is, which I think would show some impact,
right,
and give us some sense of how it's implemented and what the successes have been, et cetera, et cetera?
Absolutely. They are all of the people who work in the wellness centers are all grant funded, and the Ed Foundation sponsors relationships with community-based organizations as well. We have employees who work in the wellness centers. So, and because most of them are all grant funded, we've had to do reports annually. And so, yes, there is data. And there are a variety of funding sources. It's not one single grant. It's been a variety of different ones.
And the grant it's a 5-year grant?
Well, we're transitioning from grants that are sunsetting to the new state grant where most of the staffing that we hold are funded through a state grant now. But there are a couple of local grants, especially in American Canyon, the Innovations and PEI grants, and they are specifically for staffing at and in American Canyon schools.
Understanding what the grant applications that NVUSD has applied for and received, is that a public document to understand what grants we've applied for, what we have received, what the definition of those grants, is that public information? And if so, how would one access that?
It is public information. I think most of, I got to think about that question. Where would you access them? We don't typically put our grant applications on the website.
It wouldn't even be the application, just the list of grants. I received that question, and I didn't know how to respond.
It sounds like a communication opportunity to sort of summarize for the public that we are passing the tin cup on the school's behalf.
That's right.
And it's sort of invisible work that we do and take advantage of.
We've been quite successful And
Right.
so- But how do we do that? And I'm not asking for it tomorrow. I'm curious. I'd love to know if we have access to that. You know, I'd like to see the good work that's been done. And theoretically, how are we impacted when those grants expire? And what kind of, programmatic decisions have we been made predicated on those grants? And are they sustainable outside of that time frame? What is happening? It's more of a dialogue and interest rather than, but if we have access to that information that's already been compiled, I would like to see it.
I think we can certainly put together a listing of all the grant funds that we currently have at an August board meeting.
That would be good. But I'll bet Ms. Roca Hunt could probably contribute a lot of those, right? I remember I came to a meeting once, huffing and puffing with indignation about some expenditure, and not me, and then it turned out she'd written a grant, and that's how it was covered. Good job.
Thank you all.
Sure.
I think communicating those grants out to the general public would be very helpful, especially at this time where we're looking at making very deep and significant cuts, to show that we really are doing everything we can to get
the money bush.
Yeah, to get some extra dollars for our school district.
I think we've covered item L too.
Yeah, these are items I got.
Wait.
Right, in your spare time.
I got some.
Oh, we have some more.
Oh, other ones? Okay.
Yeah, for future agenda items. Several meetings ago now, we approved some various technology purchases. We had Naviance, we have a new sign-in system, we have the one-to-one, and we have smart boards. I would like to hear some robust implementation plans for these new technologies and how they will be implemented at our various sites in the future.
With that,
Second. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And the Warriors lost.
Is he hurt bad?
When they say